My name is Jessica, a 52-year-old office worker. I live with my husband and my daughter Hannah, who just got a job this year. With my daughter becoming a working adult, I felt a load off my shoulders. But something has been on my mind lately. I've been suspecting my husband of having an affair for a few years now. I haven't gotten any definite evidence yet, but I'm always suspicious about him. My 55-year-old husband doesn't show any signs of middle-aged spread. He looks good and is good at making conversations, so he's always been popular with women. I've only recently started to worry about my husband's potential affairs, but there's a chance he's been seeing other women since a long time ago. Until my daughter went to college, I was busy working while doing house chores and raising my daughter, so I didn't have the time to worry about my husband's potential affairs. My husband hardly helped with house chores or raising our daughter up, and it felt like I was the only one raising our daughter. When my daughter stopped needing my constant attention, I noticed that my husband always returned home late on specific days and would always go somewhere at a certain time on his days off. He would sometimes go on business trips overnight, but whenever he came home, he always seemed happy. Worried about my husband's behavior, I asked him the other day when he was leaving for a business trip. You always seem happy when you return from business trips. Are your business trips always that fun? When I asked him this in a somewhat mean way, he replied grumpily.
What are you talking about? Nothing's going on during my business trips. I'm just happy to see you and Hannah.
His quick denial seemed suspicious, but I hadn't thought about hiring a private investigator to check about my husband's affairs. The idea of confirming his affairs scared me, and I couldn't make the right decisions. Perhaps because I was worried about my husband's potential affairs, I've been feeling unwell and have lost my appetite. Mom, you don't seem to have much appetite recently. Are you feeling okay? While having dinner together, my husband, laughing, said to me,
Your loss of appetite might be a good thing as a diet, right?
Seeing him tease me, I wanted to scream that it was his fault I felt unwell. Perhaps sensing my anger, my husband quickly changed the subject.
Speaking of which, I have to get a retest for something from my company's health checkup.
Why don't we go to the hospital together and have it checked there? If nothing's wrong, we can feel relieved. I thought that if I took him to the hospital, he might be a little more concerned about me, but surprisingly, he seemed enthusiastic about the idea.
Sounds good. Let's go get checked together.
A few days later, my husband and I went to the local general hospital for exams. The results were to be explained later, but my husband started asking about my health.
Are you still losing your appetite? Do you feel any pain anywhere?
Looking at my husband, who kept asking persistently, our daughter jokingly teased us, saying, Dad, you're really worried about Mom, aren't you? You really do love her. Even though our daughter ridiculed us like that, I too believe that my husband was genuinely concerned about me. I felt embarrassed for suspecting a caring husband like him of having affairs. As I was beginning to see my husband in a new light, we received a call from the hospital where we had taken the test. They said they had something important to discuss and wanted me to come in. As they specifically requested for me, I grew anxious, thinking it might be a serious illness. Noticing my change after the phone call, my husband asked me about it.
What's wrong? Who was that call from?
My mind was already filled with worst-case scenarios, and I replied to my husband with a pale face. It was a call from the hospital. They said they have something important to discuss with me. I might have cancer. Seeing me on the verge of tears, my husband tried to cheer me up. On the day to receive the explanation from the doctor, my husband suggested taking a day off from work to accompany me. Although the hospital has said that I would be enough, I thought it would be reassuring to have my husband with me in case I was unable to return home due to the shock of hearing about having a serious illness. To be honest, since receiving the call from the hospital, I have been unable to sleep at night, and at this point, my appetite was completely gone. On the day of the hospital visit, I was feeling down from the morning and was unable to think about anything, but for some reason, my husband was energetically cheering me up. His excitement was abnormal and somewhat unsettling, but I tried to be positive, thinking that he was trying to make me feel better. My husband and I went to the hospital and sat in front of the doctor, who promptly asked my husband to leave.
I would like the husband to please wait outside.
Despite my husband insisting on staying to hear the explanation, he was ushered out into the hallway. Once my husband left the room, the doctor told me something shocking.
Your husband has pancreatic cancer and has about 3 months to live. We wanted to confirm with you whether or not to inform him, which is why we called you in today.
I was completely taken aback as I was expecting a diagnosis of my own condition, not my husband's terminal prognosis. Moreover, 3 months would be too quick and not enough, and I was anxious about how my husband would react if he was informed. I received a detailed explanation from the doctor, but I was so shocked that I could hardly remember anything. As I had feared, I was completely paralyzed by the shock of hearing the diagnosis, and I realized it was right to have brought my husband along. However, the one who was sick was not me, but my husband. I didn't know how to tell him about it. In the end, the doctor also told me about my test results.
Ma'am, your test results showed no abnormalities.
At this point, that was the least of my concerns. When I came out of the consulting room, my husband was smiling for some reason and spoke to me in a low voice.
I overheard in the hallway. Are you the one with only 3 months to live?
My husband, who misunderstood that I only had 3 months to live instead of him, almost made me blurt out the truth, but I knew that if I told him now, he would be extremely shocked. I hesitated and replied with a forced smile. That's right. You heard it, didn't you? I decided to go with the idea that I was the sick one for now, and explain it to my husband later. Even on the ride back home, my husband was in a good mood, and he didn't look like he was someone with only 3 months left to live. When we got home, I didn't know how to explain it to my husband. I looked serious, while he was exuberantly happy and frolicking around. My cheerful husband might tell our daughter the lie that I only have 3 months to live, which I wanted to avoid at all costs. Let's keep this a secret from Hannah. I'll talk to her later. While listening to me, my husband was getting ready to go out, and said with a big smile on his face,
I'm going out for a bit.
To my husband, who was about to leave, I said with a worried look on my face, Don't overdo it, okay? My husband laughed and replied,
You're the one who shouldn't overdo it.
I began to doubt whether my husband, who left the house so energetically, really had pancreatic cancer. That day, when my husband returned home, he started checking the amount of my life insurance and asking about the balance of my savings, and he seemed to be fully expecting me to pass away. Watching my husband like this, I felt foolish for worrying about him until now. Still, when I think that he only has 3 months left to live, I feel sorry for him, and I can't stop wondering how to tell him the truth. My husband, who didn't seem to care about my concerns, took a surprising action. It seems that my husband was indeed having an affair, and he confessed it on his own.
Jessica, I'm sorry. The truth is I've been cheating on you. I thought it would be sad for you to pass away not knowing the truth about me. So I decided to confess.
If I really only had 3 months left to live, I would rather pass away not knowing the truth. But I guess my husband must have felt really guilty. I didn't know what to say to him, but then he tells me something even more appalling.
And do you mind if I go on a trip with my mistress? You know, with caregiving and funeral arrangements coming up, we'll be quite busy, right? I think of this as my last request, and just let me do as I please.
Indeed, my husband was about to embark on a life of battling illness. It would certainly be his last request, so I let him have his way. I might be abnormal for allowing my husband to go on a trip with his mistress, but a husband who honestly asks his wife for permission to go on a trip with his mistress is also weird. I was worrying about how to tell my husband about his terminal illness, but now I couldn't care less. Seeing my husband, who has acted freely and acknowledged his affair the moment he learned of my terminal illness, and even thinking about my life insurance and inheritance, made me feel pathetic for worrying about how to tell him the truth. Letting him spend the remaining time as he likes seems to be the best thing for my husband. My husband applied for a leave from work and started preparing for his affair trip. I was concerned about his health, but there was no problem at all, and he was more energetic than usual. Even before he left for the trip, he seemed to go to his mistress's house every day, returning home only to change clothes. I couldn't help but worry about my husband's health, so I spoke to him when he came home to change his clothes. "If you feel sick, go to the hospital right away." My husband looks at me with a puzzled expression and retorts,
"Are you okay? You're the one who should be going to the hospital, not me. There's something wrong with your English."
It seemed like he thought I was confused due to my illness while I was actually worrying about him. Our daughter seemed to notice something odd about her own father and asked me this. "Is Dad having an affair or something? He comes home in the morning every day. Why don't you complain about it, Mom?" I thought I should tell our daughter, so I told her about my husband's terminal diagnosis and how he misunderstood it as my own. I thought our daughter would be shocked, but her reaction was surprisingly mild. My husband, who never helped with taking care of our daughter and never participated in our daughter's school events, might have just been a roommate to her. For our daughter, it seemed more unacceptable for her father to go out and play with his mistress than his terminal diagnosis, and she became angry. "I can't believe you're allowing Dad's affair, Mom. I would never forgive him if it were me." Whether I forgave him or not, he had been cheating on me behind my back all this time, so it didn't matter anymore. On the contrary, the more he did as he pleased, the greater his surprise and despair would be when he found out the truth. My husband, who got his paid leave, went on a trip with his mistress as promised. By then, I had forgotten to worry about my husband's health and how to tell him the truth. Seeing my husband enjoying his affair trip without keeping it a secret from me finally sparked my anger, and I started worrying about my husband's life insurance and savings, just like him. I considered divorcing him and claim for alimony, but my husband, who thought I was dying, would surely oppose it. He wouldn't want to lose his insurance money, nor would he want to pay alimony. Even for me, knowing that my husband's days are numbered, there's no need to insist on a divorce. My husband will be gone soon. I wondered if my husband was counting on my life insurance and property. He seemed to be off on lavish trips, almost using all our savings. In addition to traveling, he indulges in luxurious meals every night, and our savings were decreasing rapidly. I, who had no expectations for any inheritance from my husband, wanted him to spend our assets as he pleased. Eventually, my husband returned from his affair trip. Seeing me looking healthy, my husband asked an inappropriate question.
"You seem to be doing pretty well. How long are you planning to live?"
"Actually, you're the one who only has 3 months left to live, you know? You misunderstood what you overheard." Hearing the truth, my husband couldn't believe it right away. He looked at me, laughing, and responded. However, I was dumbfounded that he could say such a thing to his own wife, whom he had been with for many years. I had decided to accept my husband's fate in the past few days. I was no longer troubled by his affair, and perhaps because my stress had lessened, my stomach felt good, and my appetite had returned.
"That can't be true, can it? I'm in such good health. There's no way I only have 3 months left."
Indeed, he was surprisingly energetic. The next day we went to the hospital together and had the doctor explain. Even after being shown the results of various tests by the doctor, my husband seemed unable to believe that he had pancreatic cancer. However, it seemed that my husband had experienced symptoms explained by the doctor during his cheating trip, and his complexion quickly turned pale. My husband asked the doctor again for confirmation.
"Doctor, do I really only have 3 months to live?"
When the doctor silently nodded, my husband dropped his shoulders, looking depressed. My husband was immediately hospitalized, and strangely enough, he started to look worn out, a different person from when he thought I was the one with a pancreatic cancer. When I told the doctor that my husband had misunderstood and thought I was the one with a cancer, the doctor looked convinced.
"That's why I was hesitant to tell the patient the truth."
According to the doctor, there are people who become depressed upon hearing their diagnosis, and their symptoms get even worse. My husband must have been very happy to know that I only had 3 months to live. Perhaps that was enough to slow the progression of his cancer. My hospitalized husband seemed to have broken up with his mistress, as he wasn't in contact with her, so I decided to tease him a little. Your mistress hasn't even come to visit, has she? You don't have to worry about me. You can call her here if you want. My husband answered in a weak voice.
I broke up with my mistress. Or rather, I was dumped. She won't take my calls anymore. She told me to stop calling.
Apparently, the mistress was only with my husband because he took her on trips and bought her things. A guy like him being hospitalized isn't at all attractive for her. Furthermore, my husband was planning to rely on my life insurance and the money he was going to inherit, as he promised the mistress to buy her luxurious things. However, it would not be my life insurance but his own that would be paid out. The mistress may be cold, but our daughter only visited my husband once in the hospital and hasn't shown up since. That single visit seemed like a final farewell. I may not cry when you die, Dad. I don't remember you ever playing with me, and you never came to my school events, so goodbye. As expected, my husband was horrified by my daughter's words, but I felt that it couldn't be helped. My husband, just as the doctor had predicted, passed away 3 months after being told of his condition. Looking back, I wonder if he had any regrets at all, since he enjoyed traveling with his mistress. It was so like him to invite his mistress instead of me to the trip. I had taken a break from work to take care of my husband since he was hospitalized, but he never thanked me, which was typical of him. Our daughter, who had always been harsh to her father, looks like she actually misses him, which was somewhat relieving. If she seemed happy after his death, I would have been saddened by the thought of having raised such a cold daughter, but it seemed she did feel a little sad without him. Although my husband left nothing but life insurance, he left me the most important thing, our daughter, and for that, I must be grateful. My health has completely recovered, and my appetite has increased so much that it's becoming a problem now. I need to be careful not to overeat and live